So 2030 targets. So why is this all this pre-slides important, right? We're talking about 2030 challenge. So the 2030 challenge says, in simple phrases, it says buildings are the major culprit. Buildings consume a lot of energy. So it translates into emissions. That emissions translate into climate change. So if we cut down building energy, we cut down emissions, we stop climate change. Simply, right? So this is again for the United States. Buildings, consumption-wise, 49% of all the energy produced in the United States is consumed by buildings. But it's not all in just building operations, but it's also in the products that go into the buildings, the transportation of the materials that go into buildings, and it's also the raw material extraction that go into the buildings. So the entire building community is contributing 49% of the problem. So transportation industry share the rest. So likewise, you can see the emissions are very synonymous to consumption. So we using our design, we bring down consumption, we will bring down emissions. Hence, we will reduce climate change. And when it comes to climate change, and when it comes to emissions, there are so many different pollutants each combustion process puts out, right? There's nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur, and so many different chemicals, gases that go into the atmosphere. And it's commonly believed that CO2 and carbon monoxide are the culprits when it comes to climate change. And everything else adds to it. Yes?
We really have to look at that over the life of the building.
Yes.
Those goals. And we don't have control over the life of the building.
Right.
Maintenance can foul that objective up completely.
Right. But I'm gonna
and some owners will make those decisions counterproductive to that based on their maintenance limits.
Right. But in the entire life cycle of a project, when you take into account all the embodied energy of all this material that goes into it and the amount of energy that's spent in transportation, the operation energy is nothing. The emissions due to operation is nothing compared to how much it goes into the building. So that's why Architecture 2030 first starts at the energy level, because that's where we can directly impact first. Because that's where metrics are there today. We can measure that and we can say, yes, we've reduced it. But there are no measures yet, or metrics yet, to measure how much the actual total life of a building, when you take into account the embodied energy, the transportation, and the construction. There's no real metric yet. But that's where the majority of our impact could be. That's why it's important to specify things locally. That's why it's important to specify regional materials.
That's where LEED tried to push some of their credits towards sustainability, which is the embodied energy of getting things locally and renewable.
Right. So we just got to keep in mind, energy is nothing compared to all these things. It's still not big on our agendas yet, because there's no metric to measure and there's nobody hitting you just like energy. Because energy-wise, there's a security issue as far as where we're getting the energy from. So that's why it's a hot topic now. Pretty soon, it'll all be on the material side. And that's where Architecture 2030 is alluding to. Okay? All right, here are the energy reduction goals for now.
This is your 2030?
This is our 2030 challenge. So, I just want to make one point clear on this. Let me go through this really quick. So today, they want us to reduce 60%. Every 5 years, 10% down. And by the end of 2030, by 2030, we should be carbon neutral. But 60% of what?
The average.
Right, average building, right? But that's where 2030 challenge has gone down to now. When they started this, does anyone remember Kyoto Protocol? The underlying assumptions of Kyoto Protocol is, if us as a world go back to the 1990 levels of emissions, then we can catastrophic climate change. That's what global scientists believe, right? So it's the 1990s levels of carbon dioxide emissions. That's the baseline. So when they started out the 2030 challenge, they wanted all of us to meet or reduce from the 1990 levels down 60%, 70%, right? But there was no database that had the energy consumption of the 1990s levels. So Architecture 2030, AIA, USGBC, and several other organizations that are involved in this came to the conclusion that let's use Energy Star, which is the only thing that has this database in the country. And the latest database they have is 2003. So our average building information comes from the 2003 information, because Energy Star sends out a survey. It's called a Commercial Building CBEX something survey, and every building owner has to respond to how much they are consuming. And based on that, that's how the average building's energy is established. So our goal through design is to bring it to our target, which is 60%, 70, 80, 90, 100. And that's, when you come to 100, that'll be carbon neutral, right? Why is it carbon neutral? Because
we'll still use energy.
We'll still use energy, but we won't use fossil fuel-based energy, because fossil fuel has the carbon, which, when it's during combustion, has the pollution. So that's what 2030 Challenge is all after: carbon, right, and fossil fuel. So if we can reduce fossil fuel, we're good. So it's a solution to put, let's say your house was 17 kBTUs.
It's actually 16. I did the math.
Okay, fine, 16. So whatever your square footage is, let's say whatever that total energy required for your house alone, let's say you go and buy renewable to offset that entire amount. Are you carbon neutral?
Am I? No, because it's a mixture. So it's not at the source, or it's not at my condo.
Well, let's say you have it at your condo.
Oh. Am I? I don't know.
Yes, you are. But according to 2030 Challenge, they don't want us to do that. Can anyone say why?
Because they want to get rid of the fossil
They want
fuel.
everybody to be.
Right, right. It's also that because if the clients have the money, then this gives them the opportunity to design whatever the heck they want. So if I can have any building without considering climate, whatever it is, then if I can offset the entire amount with solar, if I have the money to do that, then I'm carbon neutral, right? Because I'm not going to the grid at all. I'm just supplying whatever I need. But they don't want us to do that, because not from an energy standpoint, but from the related emissions that go into our building from the larger industry, right? From transportation, from manufacturing. So it has a lot of impact on how we design our buildings. So that's why 2030 Challenge came up with a cap saying, all right, you're going to reduce 60%. Off that, you can only use 20% as renewables. So the projects that we're doing here with our solar projects, they're always not 2030 Challenge. They don't meet 2030 Challenge. They are carbon neutral, yes, but they don't meet 2030 Challenge. Because our intent is to, by building design, reduce as much as possible and then offset with renewables. Remember this graph? We want to reduce as much as possible by building design and then use renewable energy. And this cap is 20%. Okay? So lastly, the tool that we use that we don't have time to look at is Energy Star. We'll probably do this really quick, the first week, next week. So 2 things you need to know for this: zip code of your project and gross square footage. Okay. How many of you on your projects will know these 2 numbers right in the beginning or really close in SDs?
It's my design.
Everybody will, right? Then why can't we find the EUI?
We can.
You didn't go to the Energy Star website yet.
Huh? Oh yeah, I haven't shown yet. So
There it is.